going down. It's going down, 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 down. It's going down, down, it's going down.
You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never going to learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you can throw at me, like, you're not going to take me away from what I want to do. You can't stop me.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow, it's just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.
USA Climbing 2023 National Team Trials presented by YETI. We are in Austin, Texas, where the best climbers in the country have gathered to compete for a spot on the Boulder and Lead National Team. USA Climbing is excited to be at the beautiful brand new Mesa Rim Climbing Center in Austin. If you're in the area, y'all should come check it out. I'm Megan Martin here with three-time Canadian National Champion Allison Best. Allison, thank you so much for joining me here today.
I'm so excited to be here for this final round. It is our last round of this team trials event.
Well, the last Boulder round of this
The
team
last
trials.
combined event,
That's
both
true,
the Boulder
that's true.
round and
we
the
have
lead.
the Boulder round now, and then we're going to have the lead later on after this Boulder round. But Boulder and lead combined, first time we're seeing this, so much at stake here for these climbers. So the men here tonight are trying to be in the top 5 overall rankings to make the national team. There are 3 climbers you won't see here, Natalia Grossman and Brooke Rabitou and Colin Duffy, because they are already pre-selected to compete on the national team in that World Cup circuit later on this year.
You will be seeing a new format in tonight's final round, a little bit different than what we're used to. So there's a top 8 from the semifinal moving into this Boulder round when we're used to 6. There are 4 problems each on a 4-minute clock, and a new scoring format with a high zone worth 10 points and a low zone worth 5 points, the top being worth 25 for a total of 100 points available here in this final round.
Yeah, and so we're adding those points together from the Boulder and the lead round. This is a quick look at those overall rankings right there, that line underneath Zach Gala. So that is the top 5 as it stands, not including the final round. So Xander Waller right below that top 5 spot. So they still have the Boulder and lead round to do, so those scores on the right side could change a lot. So we really don't know what that team's going to look like yet, but everything will be determined here tonight. So it's going to be so exciting, and it was for the women yesterday, so we cannot wait to get this started.
A lot of points on the line, as you said, Megan. This current standings that you're seeing on your screen does not include this team trial event, which is worth more than anything we've seen yet in this domestic season. So I think these guys are excited to play for those points and really fight for their spot on that team heading into the next Olympic cycle.
Exactly, and bringing up that Olympic cycle is so important because they need to be able to compete in the World Cups this year in order to have opportunities to possibly qualify for Paris 2024. You see Bob Countryman right there, aka Dylan Bob Countryman, getting warmed up as Jesse Grouper is standing with USA national team coach Josh Larson. All the men are in isolation, getting ready to come out. A look at Sean Bailey. Adam Shahar had a stellar round earlier, one of the newer faces in a final. He's been on the scene for the last couple years in those elite competitions, but first final for him and a really important one to get into.
Yeah, and this morning he had a really, really solid bouldering round, so it will be interesting to see if he is able to do that again here in the final. His bouldering round and his performance there really gave him a confidence boost and were able to push him.
Quick look at Dylan Bob Countryman in the Boulder round. He also really excelled in this round and then again was able to keep that through into the lead. It's not just the one discipline. You really have to be able to put your best foot forward in both disciplines. And actually, Bob was in a really precarious situation being tied with a lot of people from the Boulder round.
Yeah, and here we have Jesse Grouper, who typically is more of a lead specialist, but he showed that he's capable of doing great things on the boulders as well. Had a great bouldering round for himself and followed it up with an even more excellent lead performance, pushing himself all the way up to the top of the lead route in the semifinal round.
And here are our athlete intros, a very familiar face, silver medalist Nathaniel Coleman getting into that number 8 spot. So big for him. It was honestly so strenuous and worrisome watching earlier because it was unsure if he was going to make it in there, but excited to see all these men out here and can't wait to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, and you can see Dylan Bob Countryman standing at the front of that line, coming into this round in first place. It'll be a high-pressure situation for him. He'll be coming out last on all the boulders and on the lead route later on today, and so it'll be interesting to see if he can handle that pressure and if he can rise to the challenge of being in that first-place position coming into this final round.
And a cool thing about the scoring, I mean, Jesse Gruber topped the route and still came second to Bob. So Bob's bouldering round was so good that even though he didn't top the route, he still came out on top. So a little taste of what the scoring can do and how we really can't decide much until we actually get to the final part of this competition. And again, we want to stress that the cumulative points are the most important thing to strive for. Tops, you get 25 points per top. Now, if there's some falls, that means you get deducted 0.1 for each fall. So you might not get the full 25, but if you are able to top something, you'll be 24 point something. So here are the points on the line that they can earn from this competition. So the team trials competition, if you win first place, that's 1,200 points going to your already the score you already have from nationals, and if you were competing in World Cups last season, there are some scores there too. So these are what these men are hoping to gain in this competition, and hopefully that puts them in that top 5 ranking overall.
Yeah, and Megan, it'll be really interesting to see how that all pans out. Some of these athletes have a lot of wiggle room, Sean Bailey being one of them with his World Cup points from this last season. And the man that you see on your screen right now, Nathaniel Coleman, is in a little bit of the opposite situation. He did not have the chance to compete on the World Cup circuit last season because of a finger injury, and underperformed a little bit at Nationals because of a different finger injury. And so I think he's happy to be here and to be healthy and to have squeaked into finals in that 8th position, because he really needs to improve upon that score here in the final round tonight.
Yeah, and being an Olympian already, he wants to get back to that stage, and in order to do so, he has to be able to get qualified for the national team to be able to compete in those World Cups. So getting into this final was very necessary for him, and already right up on the boulder. The men did get a preview earlier. They got to spend 2 minutes per boulder walking through it with each other. They're allowed to touch the start hold and nothing else. So when they come out with that 4-minute clock, they already know the boulder they're going to see first, so they have an idea and they can kind of jump on the wall a little quicker than we see them in the semifinal round.
Something that's interesting about Nathaniel is he's not a stranger to this situation. He's squeaked into finals a lot before. Some of his first national bouldering championships, his first time he won bouldering nationals, and the following year he squeaked into finals in last place, barely made it into that round, and then was able to win it all. And even today, when he qualified in 8th place, I know his mom and his agent and his coach and a bunch of other people were just sort of walking around saying, "Oh, classic Nathaniel," and really excited to see what he could do in this low pressure situation, and having been in this place before where he is qualified in last place into a final round and really needs to perform well.
Yeah, it is a place that he is more comfortable than most people. I'm pretty sure even, his first World Cup podiums or wins were also kind of in that same scenario where he just squeaked in and everyone's like, "Who's this kid from the USA? What's going on?" And then he ends up on the podium or wins the competition. So again, no stranger to that. And also at the Olympics, I mean, he had to fight so hard to get into that final, and then even until the end, if he hadn't fought so hard on that route, he wouldn't have ended up with that silver medal. So seasoned competitor here, and just trying to figure out how to get through this opening section. That's a little tricky. We were talking to the route setters a bit earlier. A little slip there.
I will say, though, Megan, we did stand in front of this boulder, you and I together, and I would not have guessed that this move would be so challenging.
You are so right. I also thought that, well, they're saying it's so hard, but it does seem like it doesn't look that difficult, but definitely a little harder than we expected to kind of get into a stable position here to continue through the boulder.
I do think that 5 zone that he's on right now is worse than it looks. It's a big hold, but I think it's quite slopey, not very in-cut. You can see him setting up to do this next move dynamically, which was the way the route setters intended it. Flipping that right hand to get opposition on the volume and just losing it a little bit with that foot slip. He does have 1 minute and 15 seconds left on the clock, which should be plenty of time to give him another good attempt, but let's take another look at that move from Nathaniel Coleman.
Also a move that he's really good at, and one I think a lot of the men will have read pretty quickly. It's not like a new move to them. It's something that they've seen a lot of the time in various iterations, but as you go through these competitions, you do see that a lot, right? You see little minute changes to the same type of move. So when you can recognize it quickly, it's nice that you know what you're doing right away.
Yeah, you bet. And now that he's figured that out and knows he can do it, we'll see if he's able to execute here on what might be his final attempt if he gets back up into that same position.
And again, really stressing the fact that the points are just so important. So even getting to the 10, I mean, coming on at 25 seconds here, I think is worth it just to get the 10. Oh, he's going to say no, he's done. So Nathaniel Coleman will go back into that secondary isolation and take a little breather. Now, a little different in this round, the way we go through the final round here after the 4th competitor. We will start bringing multiple competitors out. So once the 4th competitor has gone, when the 5th competitor comes out to the 1st boulder, Nathaniel will then come out to the 2nd boulder. So we'll be able to get through this round a little faster than a normal boulder final, which is really nice. We did it with the women yesterday. It had a really nice flow. It gives the athletes enough time to rest, but not too much time sitting around, because honestly, 8 people in a boulder final, we usually have 6, so having the 8 people, that's a lot of time if we were just bringing one person out per boulder. So that staggered flow of the final is actually great for everyone.
Yeah, and at the last Olympics, they corrected for the amount of time that it would take to move people through a boulder round by eliminating a boulder and having only 3 boulders in the final. So it's really great that we can have all 4 boulders and use this staggered format to be able to move through the boulder round in a timely fashion. As you see, Hugo Hoyer here brushing up all of these holds, getting ready for his first attempt on this boulder.
And Hugo quickly getting familiar with being in finals on the elite stage, as he was in the final in lead and bouldering at Boulder and Lead Nationals. So even though he's 15 years old, this is becoming a familiar space for him.
Yeah, it's always really cool to see athletes on their first year doing really well. I think when it's your first time doing anything, there's the lowest amount of expectations possible, and he can really just come out here and have fun and try to be learning and improving upon his last result at Open Nationals. So it's really cool to see him out here in a final again.
Yeah, and he really read the opening move well, and it looks like he's got the right idea here. Didn't quite hit the right body positions to make it work, but plenty of time on the clock still. I was really impressed by his execution on that first move. Getting that foot over seems kind of slippery. Yeah, as we saw Nathaniel struggle a little bit there.
Yeah, he did a really good job of keeping good body tension, I should say, between that first hold and the place where he's toe hooking down below him. And yeah, I mean, really impressive the way he's moving into that 5-point zone. Nice. And holding the kick over there.
See if he can find that right body position here to get into that flip. Thought about going static. We talked about that with some of the route setters. They said it's possible, but it's a lot harder than doing the flip, and they assumed that most of the men would probably do the flip way because not as light, or it doesn't make as much sense to expend extra energy, especially because these men have had a really long day. They've already been through a round of 4 boulders. They also did a lead route. Now they have 4 more boulders to do, and then they're going to go climb another lead route. So it's a pretty unforgiving format in terms of physicality, and also just the mental fortitude to be able to make it through all of this and keep yourself psyched.
Yeah, really high demand. I think typically in a round where you have a little bit of a break between the semi and final, a nice stick from Hugo Hoyer.
Interested to see his approach here. The heel hook, definitely a great approach. I am excited to see the mantle. The angle of this volume is pretty steep, so you're gonna have to rock over really well, and that foot is so high, so to get up over that foot, a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was saying, when you have there's a good look at the route setters, checking out their handiwork. I think they're eager to see how things are going to play out. Our head setter there said earlier that they do their best. They put the boulders up on the wall, but then it's really up to the athletes to see how things play out, and you never really know. So I think they're waiting on anxiously.
Yeah, Ian McIntosh, all about how the climbers express themselves. I feel like he often likes to say, we'll see how they express themselves on the boulders. So I think they're looking pretty pleased right now.
Yeah, and he's the guy in the middle with his hood up there.
Yeah.
Done a really great job.
No hat.
These guys work really hard. These guys and girls, we've got a few female route setters on the route setting team, which is not always the case, so that's really exciting to see them up here and to have been able to then be putting in the work on the route setting squad here this week.
Running down the clock here, Hugo Hoyer trying to get back up into this mantle position where he has to press himself up on top of this blue volume. Trying to go for the heel hook. I think that might be really difficult to do it that way, but we'll have to wait and see. Nice efforts from Hugo Hoyer. Really efficient throughout his climbing here, but not enough to make it to the top. But getting that 5 low zone on his first attempt was definitely really clutch, because you're trying to get all the points as possible, and you don't want to lose that many. And that 0.1 deduction for every fall, you want to avoid that happening too often. Xander Waller turning around for his attempt on men's number 1.
And Megan, as I've started saying a couple times, but too many things have been happening. I think for these guys, a lot of times when you have more breaks between rounds, you have a moment to absorb the excitement of making the next round and to sort of sit in that moment of being proud of yourself for doing enough to get into the next round, and these guys haven't really had that. They just finished the last round a few hours ago and had to go straight back into isolation, so they didn't have a moment to just revel in the fact that they get to be in this final. They have to go straight into another round and have anxiety and nerves and have to prove themselves right away. So it is, as you said, a giant mental tax for these guys, and obviously they're working really hard. It's really physical as well, but mentally this round is really tough.
So true. And Xander Waller just showing his ability there, getting into that 5 low zone immediately. I also wonder if having too much time to let it soak in would bring their adrenaline down, and with this day asking so much of them, kind of make it harder. Because, you know, when you have a few moments to kind of really sit down, eat some food, then you kind of start to lose that psych. So it might be a good thing to just like keep it going and not really have that time. I know it's exhausting, but I think maybe, you know, with a little caffeine, you can keep that adrenaline up, and it doesn't really give you a time to relax too much.
Yeah, we had our second place finisher from the women's round last night, Kyra Condi, in the booth earlier, and she was saying just logistically it's hard to make sure you're getting all the food you need, and you're nervous, so maybe your stomach's not sitting quite right, and it takes a lot of planning and it takes a lot out of these guys. And Xander Waller is making this first section of this boulder also look quite comfortable. Looks like he's going to try to go for that static method, thinks better of it. You really got to commit to getting over your foot in order to make this flip work. That was a little bit closer from him. You can see his sweat marks on the left side of that blue volume.
Yeah, that humidity here is definitely something. Just taking a few seconds to brush the hold, trying to figure out that movement. It is interesting when you see moves like this that some people just make look so easy, and then they kind of have other people struggling on that section a bit more than you might have thought they would have. But I do think that he has plenty of time to figure it out still. Just a matter of making it happen.
Walking back up to the start holds, ready to launch into this tenuous first move here once again. Stabbing the foot out really nicely. Seems like he's learned that move well and is able to execute it over and over again. Coming into this press and flip.
Oh,
looks like his foot just touched the ground a little bit, and maybe if it hadn't, he would have been able to hold that. But if you do brush the ground like that, you do have to come off the wall, even if you don't necessarily fall. The judges will call you off. You're not allowed to touch the ground with any part of your body, even if you feel like you're not maybe weighting it so much. That's what we like to call a dab, and the judges will call you off.
Exactly. And, you know, it's really nice to see Waller back in the final. Here's a quick look at that little dab he had there. So he knew immediately that he needed to come off of the wall. But yeah, Xander hasn't been in a final since 2021 Nationals. He was in both the Boulder and lead finals, but it's been a bit since then. And at Pan Am's in 2020, he placed third, and in order to make the Olympic team there, you had to win. So he narrowly missed that chance of qualifying for the Olympics. So the fact that he's in this final and still fighting for that top 5 spot on the national team in order to kind of get back to that opportunity of going for the Olympics again, it's really big for him to be able to have done that here. And he's looking for something more on this boulder, but he definitely has 3 more opportunities to make something happen.
Yeah, and he will walk away with that score of 5.0. Really good for him to flash to that first zone, but I think he was definitely looking for more. Something that is complex, really great in some ways, but also really challenging for athletes is the U.S. has a deep field of men competing here and women, but in this final in particular, it's sort of anybody's game, and it's really hard for these athletes to stay in it mentally, especially knowing that if they open the door a little bit, there's somebody right behind them who will walk in and take their place on the national team to be fighting for that Olympic spot. So high pressure situation, and really fun for these athletes to be able to compete against so many great competitors, and a lot of them are friends, but it does make it really, really hard when you have such a deep field within the same country.
Yeah, it's a great problem to have for the USA, but also a tough problem for the competitors, because really if you have just an off day, it could be really life-changing for you. It could be the result of then maybe not getting to compete in the World Cups. So, like you said, it's really stressful, and on top of that, they have all this climbing to do today. Sean Bailey was quickly into the 5. Didn't really quite get over enough to the left to make that flip happen. It's interesting, the sweat marks on the top of that blue volume are not going away, even though they keep brushing around it. They're just kind of staying there. I also wonder if grabbing a little lower, making it wider, would actually be beneficial.
Yeah, as Megan mentioned earlier, that angle of that volume is very poor. It's a flat volume. It doesn't have much, it doesn't have a very steep angle to it. So it's hard for these athletes to get purchase on it if they don't end up in the correct body position coming out of that dynamic pull. So that flip of the right hand is really one thing that's keeping them on the wall, but it's also having their hips set right above their feet on that foot volume and making sure they're in a stable position when they arrive at that left hand volume. It's a lot of complexity, a lot of stuff happening, and it's a tall order to ask of these athletes to, in a single move, have to coordinate so many different limbs and so many different things at the same time.
Exactly, and on that attempt, Sean had a little slip when he was establishing. He was able to save it, but then I think it made it harder for him to set up properly to go to the 5 again. Again, we have to stress that 0.1 deduction is something you don't really want to give away. So him trying to stay on the wall was a good idea, but unfortunately kind of backfired because I do think it put him in just enough of the wrong body position to not be able to get to the 5 like he had on previous attempts.
I think just one way to describe this boulder is just a little bit awkward. None of the body positions are really where you want them.
Right.
Yeah, none of the holds are all that good. Really, you have to do everything almost perfectly in order to stay on the wall the whole time for this boulder. Hugo Hoyer doing a really good job on this boulder.
Oh, just sliding off. You can see his sweat marks on that left volume because he had it and then he starts sliding. Again, we have to talk about the skin. We'll do a quick replay here of him almost holding on, had it, and then you see that final slick there that pulls him off of the wall, immediately looking at his skin.
And again, yeah, Hugo Hoyer, the only one to get up to that 10 zone so far. This boulder has been proving to be more difficult than Megan and I anticipated standing underneath it, at least.
We didn't touch it, so we were just, assuming things, which is never a good idea. Not a lot of time, but still enough time to get to the 10. I think you could even have the clock go all the way down to 20 and still be in a good spot to get the 10. And at this point, the 10 is really important. But Sean's going to leave with that. And good attempts. He fought hard, but there are 3 more boulders. Probably a good idea to save the skin, plus a lead route later on. So that score of 5 is what Sean will get on that first boulder. And we're going to go to a break, and we will be back with more of the men's final after that.
You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're going to be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that bad things will happen and that you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me, it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never going to learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you could throw at me, you're not going to take me away from what I want to do. You can't stop me.
Welcome back to the 2023 National Team Trials. This is the men's boulder final portion of the Boulder and Lead combined event. We just saw 4 men attempt boulder number 1, so now we're going to bring Nathaniel Coleman back out. He's going to start on boulder number 2, and Zach Galla, our 5th competitor of the night, is going to come out on boulder number 1. So this is when that staggered start begins.
Yeah, and this is a new format for both these guys and for all of you spectating at home. One thing that's really great is we do have 2 athletes on the wall at the same time for the majority of the boulder final round. And it does make for a lot of sports action a lot less downtime than we're used to having with one athlete on the wall at a time. So I'm excited to see how this plays out here in the final round tonight.
And our first look at men's number 2, a really dynamic start, followed by a really exciting coordination move that the crowd is absolutely loving. Nathaniel having to be very specific while he aims for the tiny parts in between those screw-ons. And then, so where he's standing, there's a small screw-on on top and then another one on top, so there's only a little bit of surface area for him to stand on. Flashing to the 10, which is going to be huge for him, especially since he didn't get to the 10 on the first boulder. Again, points are so important. The more points you can get, the better off you're going to be moving into that lead round of the competition, because those scores are going to be combined later on.
I was going to say, once again, with that new scoring format, the couple things that we have learned to pay attention to, one is how close in score these athletes end up being together. And so far, everybody getting similar results on the first boulder with the exception of Hugo Hoyer, but no tops yet. And it is important for these athletes to get points no matter what. So every zone, every extra 5 points, every extra 15 points with the top does matter for these athletes and gives them a little bit more wiggle room in the lead. We see Zach Galla here sticking that flip, hoping to secure an extra 5 points with that 10-point zone. High foot and a drop knee.
Wow, really showing how strong he is with that drop knee and having to hold that swing on the 10. Now being smaller, mantles generally do suit smaller climbers better. Zach's about 5'7", so he's already in a pretty good position to try to get up on top of this volume. We saw Hugo really struggle there, and if you saw, his fingers were flexed and he was pressing off of them. That was insane. Nathaniel Coleman getting back on men's number 2, very close to the finish on his first attempt. See if he can get back to where he was before, just trying to get his toe wedged in between those two screw-on holds.
You can really only get a few fingers in. Oh, there's
That's a
the
nice
one that Megan
close-up.
was talking about. This boulder is actually reminding me of, there was a video from one of the Vail World Cups that went viral of Nathaniel. It was all over the internet, all over Instagram, but it was of Nathaniel catching a hold with like 1 or 2 fingers. And he really is doing that there. He's wriggling his fingers in between that blocker and trying to figure out the best way to hold that position. And I mean, that is a wild move.
Every time I think about that video, I cringe on the inside, because watching him catch with that, just his middle finger, it looks like he might bust his pulley fully, and thank you for putting that in my mind now. I'm having a hard time.
You're welcome.
Surviving here, but Zach Galla back up on men's number 1. Plenty of time to finish this boulder. Just needs to make sure he makes good decisions. Going to go back with the beta that worked for him the first time. Easily gets into the 10. And just has to find the right body positions on this mantles. Mantles are generally something you need to be patient with, because you don't want to try to force something. You kind of want your body to kind of get into the position. Looks like he's almost got himself pressed above. Oh, he's going to lose it at the last second. Nathaniel back trying to wedge himself in between those little 2 screw-ons, and then with the handholds, got to turn out of this very difficult move. Oh, trying so hard. I feel like I don't get to see him try that hard that often.
I know, that was really incredible fight to see from Nathaniel Coleman. I'm going to be honest with you, that boulder kind of just looks like it's straight up hard. I'm not really sure what the solution is there, but hopefully we will get to see it from one of the following athletes. We're going to have Hugo Hoyer back out on the floor on boulder number 2, that nasty crimp boulder we just saw Nathaniel Coleman on. Seen here with his score now of 14.9 from the first 2 boulders.
And we saw a flash of Zach Galla's score before that with a score of 9.9, which is 1 fall less than what Hugo Hoyer did on boulder number 1. So Zach's already put himself in a good position within the round. Hugo Hoyer's stepping out for men's number 2. Going to take a few moments to brush the holds before getting on with his first attempt. Hard to aim the brush on the little holds, as Adam Shahar rushes men's number 1, his first time in an elite final. A great place to have your first time happen, especially with that opportunity to compete in the World Cups if you can make it onto that national team.
And he was kind of the man of the morning, talk of the town, if you will.
Talk of the town.
He had a great boulder round this morning. I think he'll be fired up from that and hoping to follow that up with an excellent boulder performance here tonight that really gave him a lot of wiggle room going into the lead round. And I think he's hoping to do the same thing here tonight.
Yeah, and Hugo Hoyer quickly up into the 5 on men's number 2. Really exciting and powerful boulder. Then followed by some just nasty, straightforward, bear down crimping and finger strength intensive finger strength and footwork as well. It's kind of a cool combination of movements within this boulder. Hugo choosing to try to do a high right foot rather than wedge his toe in between those 2 little screw-on holds.
Adam Shahar struggling a little bit on this first move like we saw with our first athlete out, Nathaniel Coleman. Let's see if he can kick that over that time. There we go. I think that move just takes a second for some of the athletes to learn to understand the body position and the timing that's required to kick the foot over onto that sloping volume.
I love how everyone does that little touchdown to the next hold with the right hand. Like, can I crop? No, I have to be.
Just to see. Might as well test
I just want to touch it for a second and see. Hugo quickly back up on men's number 2. See if he adjusts his beta here and tries to use that foot out left after he gets this left hand. Is going to go with that. Little drop knee nicely into that cross, but can he get out of it? That's where it's really difficult. Oh my gosh! I don't know if he could be closer.
That was really smart.
Could he be any closer?
Could he be any closer? That was really smart from Hugo Hoyer, pressing his left hand against the wall to stop himself from rotating, try to decrease the amount of swing he had going and decrease the amount of momentum he had carrying through on that tiny little crimp. He does only have a few fingers on the wall. Really great learning from him, and hopefully that beta will work on his next attempt.
Yeah, still has a good chunk of time to get back up there as Adam Shahar tries to do this dynamic flip nicely into it that time. He looked down and shuffled, so it looks like he is going to go with that heel hook into the 10. So getting more points here, putting himself in a great position. Let's see if he can be the first person to figure out this mantle. Already getting rocked up pretty well. Has to keep inching his way as Hugo bears down on the right side. Oh, I guess he could be a little closer. That was even closer than the first time. Adam also falling off as well. These first 2 boulders just proving to be very difficult.
I've said it once, I'll say it again. 40 seconds is the worst amount of time to fall with. It doesn't feel, you can see I think Adam's done, deciding not to give it another attempt, but it feels like it's almost enough time to give a really good try, but it's definitely not as much time as you'd want on that clock.
But we could see something incredible happen in terms of a buzzer beater here. We've definitely seen it before. Will Hugo Hoyer be able to make it happen? Will he unwind and get to the top in under 10 seconds? He looks like he has a chance to, but can he hold on? Oh man, I mean, I'm glad he tried again.
If it was lead, I would have given him a plus off that hold.
Great climbing by Hugo Hoyer and Adam Shahar. Adam Shahar's score of 9.5, great way to start the round. Able to get to that 10 zone, which we've only seen Hugo and Zach Galla also get to. Hugo sighing some relief and exhaustion as he gets back there. His score of 19.7, keeping him at the top of the leaderboard right now. Off to a great start in the round as Xander Waller runs out to boulder number 2, and we get our first look at Jesse Grouper on men's number 1.
We've said it once, we'll say it again. Jesse does prefer the lead discipline, but he has been working a lot on his bouldering skills, and as we saw in our earlier rounds, he did top the lead route as he was required, but he did not get that top spot. He needed a few more points in the boulder round in order to bump Bob Countryman down off of the top of the leaderboard. So he does need some points here. He needs to have a good bouldering round. There are other good lead climbers in this final. So in this format, you can be a specialist, you can prefer one discipline, but we really are seeing that you do have to get some points in both, and you have to Wow. Try to have the best round you can, obviously,
yeah,
in both disciplines.
Xander Waller choosing to do the start a little differently. So those tape start holds, you can use them to get into position, and he did that instead of being more dynamic. He also did that move into the 5 a little different by bringing his feet over easily out of the cross, setting himself up perfectly. Just slips at the end, but plenty of time for him to try that again. Really cool to see him confidently move through that cross section of the boulder, and looks like he has a great shot of getting the top here.
Yeah, really explosively firing off that right hand as he was moving towards the finish hold. Hopefully he can make it connect on his next attempt. Jesse Grouper pulling on again towards that 5 zone, eyeing up that kick over.
Almost there. You see on his left knee, he's got a brace, had a knee injury earlier in the season. It's definitely getting better, but still making sure he's cautious with it, because making the team here is really important, but they have a long season ahead of them if they do, and that is Jesse Grouper's goal, is to get on that national team and then start doing the World Cup circuit, which starts in April and goes through August. So that's a really long season, and you want to be really fresh by the time you get there, so making sure he's protected here is really smart.
And as we've mentioned, Megan, one of our pre-qualified athletes, Colin Duffy, is not here. Jesse is also pre-qualified for lead. He is in the top 10 in the international ranking for that discipline only, but in order to qualify for the Olympics, you have to be able to do both. So that is why Jesse is here, competing in the boulder discipline and trying to get onto the combined team. Xander Waller crossing through to that 10-point zone.
Oh, just drops it on that attempt.
Not quite as stable on the right foot, I think, for Xander Waller on that cross-through move. I think it's really tenuous, and you have to be really precise.
Yeah, exactly. And just because you do it once doesn't mean it's going to happen every time. Sometimes moves are lower percentage, so it doesn't mean you're not going to do it again. It's just maybe you'll do it every 2 or 3 tries versus every single try. Jesse got really close on his last attempt to getting into that flip. Still has plenty of time to figure it out. No one has topped this boulder, so getting to the 10 would be ideal at least, so it makes sense to get back on, especially at 1 minute and 5 seconds left here for Jesse.
And there is no result screen for these athletes behind that curtain like there is for you on your screen. So they don't know how each other are doing on all the individual boulders. They're just focusing on themselves, trying to get as many points as possible, and don't really have any idea where they stand in relation to everybody else.
Exactly. Sure, when the crowd reacts to something, they can kind of get a sense of what's going on. But honestly, especially after talking to Kyra earlier, like, no one's really trying to pay attention to the scores and guesstimate, because in reality, you really need to just focus on the climbing, because that's what you need to do. If you can just do the climbing well, you should be able to make it to where you want to. One hand on the finish for Xander, but can he get 2? This would be the first top of this boulder if he can make it happen. Still proving to be difficult all the way through just to the match. Is he going to make it happen? Oh! Looks like it's not going to happen for Xander Waller. That's a heartbreaker when you drop a finish like that. But the route setters did say a lot of these boulders do have difficult finishing matches. And in order to top, you have to match that finish hold.
And it is really mentally difficult sometimes. You can see Jesse Grouper sitting there with his score of 4.9 after getting the 5 zone on the first boulder, and Xander Waller walking back into that secondary isolation to join him. But I was going to say, it is really difficult mentally. Xander has his score of 15.0 on the screen. For somebody like Xander who falls matching the finish, that was obviously a little bit farther than we've seen anybody else get. But unfortunately, if you don't get both hands on that finish, you're not rewarded for that progression, and you end up with the same score as somebody who is maybe slightly below you were in the end.
Exactly. It is just a really heartbreaker moment. I will say the fact that he was able to flash to all of the zones on that boulder will definitely serve him well, but again, really tough doing all that extra work and not really getting rewarded for it. Sean Bailey outrushing men's number 2 as we got our first look at Bob Countryman on men's number 1, taking a second to brush that volume, which is a great idea because it's been getting pretty grimy.
Megan, Sean Bailey is a man that I can see really liking this boulder.
He's going to love it.
We'll see how he does here, working his way up into this little triple cluster of holds here.
He has very, very strong fingers. This kind of a move is generally not something that taxes him so much, as he can just easily, on one hand, reach to that finish. Now, he does need to figure out how to match. We already saw Xander Waller struggle here. Isn't quite long enough, it seems, to get to that toe hook. He's going to choose to try to match from this right side by wedging his toe into that tiny cluster there. Oof. Tricky, tricky, tricky. There we go. See if he can make that happen. Oh, not going to make it work. Now, that is a very, very precarious finish. It's almost kind of mean.
It is a little bit mean. I mean, it's sort of what I was saying before is
yeah.
Getting that 10-point zone we've seen a few times, and we've only seen a couple athletes actually end up at that finish hold. It's a really tenuous position. There's a lot of foot options, so it's hard for these athletes to choose what feels best. You can see them really thinking about that right foot option first before switching feet on that volume once again. It's tough to know when you're in a situation like that what the best option to go with is.
And I feel like I don't think you can do this within the rules, but it would have been cool if they put the 10 on the top as well, right? So if you had to have a hand on the top in order to get the 10, it could have been a cool option.
Yeah, I wonder if you can do that.
I don't know
the
if
match
that's
is the 25.
laid out in the rules. It's like, you can't do that. We'll have to reference that later. And now that I said that, if it's not in there, they might put it in there. Who knows?
Call it the Megan Martin rule.
I like it. Man, that is a really difficult match. Also, with the humidity, a hold like that, having to spend so much time on it with your left hand as you try to find the body position. Bob Dylan back into men's number one, setting up for this flip, going really dynamically with a little kick there to start the momentum. I honestly don't think he needs that extra momentum. I think he needs to stay on that left foot and really commit to it that way.
Megan, these sparkly blue volumes that you see are made in-house here at Mesa Rim, and they are brand new. So they're very textured. You can see all the athletes looking at their hands as they're coming off of the wall. Sean Bailey popping back up to the 5-point zone, going up left hand once again to that little Crosley stack.
Crosley, such a good word.
I know.
I love that one.
Crossing under that 10-point zone, unwinding with a little more speed this time.
It's crazy how easy he makes that move look. Bob really panicking now, trying to get back on the boulder so he can get back into that flip. Sean trying to find that right balance point in order to top this boulder. Is he going to be able to make it happen? No. Oh, such a heartbreaker. Dang.
And you can see him looking at his skin too. That may be becoming a factor for him in this round. Once again, these athletes have done a lot of climbing already today on new holds in a new gym, so texture's high on a lot of that, and I think they're feeling it in the skin department. Sean Bailey walking off with a score of 15 even, meaning that all of the zones he acquired, he got on his first try, which is really impressive, but I think he was also really looking for a top on that boulder.
Totally, but that does put him tied with Xander Waller. But then we still have leads, so it doesn't really matter, but countbacks would come into play if there was a tie. 4.9 for Dylan, Bob Countryman, and we will be gone for a second with a quick commercial break, and then we'll see you back here.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional, and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow is just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.
Welcome back to the men's final round in the boulder discipline of the 2023 National Team Trials. Here are your current standings after a couple boulders. Hugo Hoyer, well, that's a tongue twister, at the top of the leaderboard right now. Sean Bailey and Xander Waller right behind him with the same score of 15, and Nathaniel Coleman with that 14.9. Nathaniel now moving on to that third boulder as we have Zach Galla getting on the second boulder. So this is our first time seeing this third boulder. Nathaniel Coleman with that score of 14.9. He was qualified into the final in 8th place, so that's why he's coming out first to every boulder, and he will be the first person on the lead route later tonight as well. Zach Galla brushing men's number 2. We've seen a lot of the men get into that 10 high zone on men's number 2, but what's proving to be the most difficult part of this boulder is actually matching that finish hold. We saw it dropped by both Sean Bailey and Xander Waller. Ooh, and honestly, it just seems really difficult. On top of the fact that it is a really bad hold, it's hard to find the balance position, but it's also humid and you've done all these moves ahead of time to get there. You can't really chalk up at that moment, so it's hard to make it work out.
Yeah, Megan, other than finding opposition on that volume and maybe placing your feet really well, I'd like to say I know everything sitting behind the commentating booth and can give you some insight into how to solve that match of the finish, but I got nothing.
I love the honesty. Nathaniel Coleman working his way up into that 10 high zone quickly on men's number 3. A little more technical, a little pressy, having to find the right body positions. Very different from the boulder that Zach Galla is on right now. This one requiring a lot more raw power and raw finger strength as well. Like that coordination move that Nathaniel was trying on the men's number 3 boulder. Really exciting.
And I'm really excited to see how Zach Galla does on this move to the 10 zone and this unwind. This is also in Zach Galla's wheelhouse, similarly to how it was for Sean Bailey. You can see the power in his right bicep rolling through that 10 zone. One hand on the finish, but can he match? You do need 2 hands on this finish hold.
Oh, not going to make it happen. You know, he did chalk up on right before the cross, which was a good idea, though I do feel like you want your left hand chalked. And, you know, he kind of hung out there for a second before he went with the left hand to the finish. Honestly, I mean, I didn't think anyone could chalk there, but I think Zach could actually take a second and chalk before going to that top hold, because I think it might be helpful.
Yeah, and it would be really great to see a top on that second boulder or this third boulder, honestly.
Or any boulder.
I was going to say we've just finished boulder number 1, and we didn't see any tops there, so the crowd is eager. I'm sure all of you watching at home are eager to see somebody top something, and we'll see if Nathaniel can make it connect here. Moving off the 10-point zone. He tried this little coordination move last time. We'll see if that's what he tries again here.
He's going to just try to static there. Might have been the better way. Clearly in a more stable position here. Oof, he made that look pretty easy, honestly, but that is a really hard move to do, to be able to bring your foot that high while pinching. An okay hold, not really that great. That body position is really hard. Now, again, we look like we're in a weird spot. I like the way he's trying to get into this knee bar, making really good decisions there. Not everybody has the same shin deck, so the way he stacked himself there made it so he could easily fit into that knee bar. His experience on the competition circuit really showing there. The first top of the round, and the crowd is going absolutely wild.
I mean, that move is incredible. To be able to stack your legs on top of each other to create a longer knee bar, that's something that you see sometimes with outdoor sport climbers, and that is something that Nathaniel's been doing a lot of lately, so maybe that's where he learned it. But he is so creative, so smart. Excellent to see a top from him. And will we see one from Zach Galla? Back up with one hand on the top.
Ooh,
Can he do it?
That's
and he
the
does.
Buddha, and he made it work. Zach Galla with an amazing set of men's number 2. Both Nathaniel and Zach with the only tops in the round so far. The crowd going absolutely wild.
And cool to see him do it together. We had this top from Nathaniel Coleman followed so closely by the top from Zach Galla. Watch his legs here as he stacks his right foot on top of his left foot to create an extra long knee bar on that orange hold. Makes the match, and then gives a little show to the crowd.
That's what he said. This wrap here for Zach Galla on that last hold just completely changed the way that hold actually felt. Neither neither Xander Waller or Sean Bailey tried that. They just tried to stay on the left side. That wrap really creating that opposition you were talking about earlier. Nathaniel Coleman's score of 39.8 putting him in a really great position now, and Zach Galla with just his 2 boulders, he has a score of 34.7, so really not that far behind Nathaniel, and he's only been on 2 boulders.
Absolutely. These scores, I think, are going to continue to change a lot. Nathaniel was just the first athlete on this 3rd boulder, but he did solve that boulder in a really creative way that I'm not sure all the athletes will either think about or be able to do. So I think we're going to see some other attempted solutions there, and we'll see what's going to work for some of the other athletes that have different ideas, different heights, and different strengths.
So true. Adam Shahar on the left on men's number 2, and Hugo Hoyer on the right on men's. We'll see Hugo Hoyer on men's number 3 in a second. They will definitely have known that, Nathaniel and Zach topped because the crowd went absolutely wild. The lights were going wild. Here are the route setters looking on, probably pleased that both of those boulders got done, considering the first boulder didn't, and the fact that we've had a lot of men on boulder number 2, and Zach was the first one to actually get it done.
And like Megan said, Adam will likely know that Zach got to the top of that boulder, or at least got to somewhere where nobody else has before, just based on the reaction of the crowd and Zach's, honestly, demeanor coming back into the ice. So you can see him trying to find that foothold.
Oh, he almost held that.
Almost holding it with one hand.
Goodness gracious. What are these kids drinking? What's in the water? That was insane. Hugo Hoyer getting on this delicate start. Nathaniel didn't seem to have too much of an issue on these opening moves, but Hugo on his first attempt kind of dropping it. Actually, his first couple of attempts. Now he has gotten past the 5, just kind of falling out of that volume. We saw Nathaniel really press up into the black volume rather than focus on staying on the right side of the gray. It seems like the more pressure you can put into that black volume, the better position you're in to then set up to go to the 10. Adam Shahar taking a second. The men's number 2 boulder, the opening being pretty taxing, those first couple moves into the 5, even no matter which way you do it, whether you throw the foot or you cross and throw the palm, very powerful, or double clutch jump, or not double clutch, just like dyno.
I was gonna say, even if a crimp is good, it's still taxing to be jumping with it, to it with both hands.
Exactly. Looks like he's in somewhat of a better position here. Really needs that foot to stay, having a hard time squeezing it in there. Oh my gosh! Whoa! He almost held that again. Wow. Well, clearly he knows how to do a one arm.
Yeah, that was really impressive from him. Really incredible finger strength. It honestly makes me think if he can get into a position where he can keep his feet on, then he's going to do that move.
Yeah, exactly. Hugo finding that position he needed to find in order to get to the 10. Now it'll be interesting to see if he goes with that dynamic stand-up that we saw Nathaniel try on the first attempt, or if he just tries to jump and pinch and then bring the feet up later. Seems like there's a few options.
Yeah, doing a good job of resting in this position, trying to compose himself. If he does fall here, he will only have a minute left. So he'd like to do that in that attempt. Again, a minute is enough time for him to get back up there, but the beginning of this boulder does climb slow, so he's not going to have much rest before he's going to get back onto this boulder.
So true, as Adam Shahar is back on men's number 2, a boulder that climbs a bit more quickly than men's number 3. Back into that cross. Now we've seen him almost hold this unwinding motion without that left foot staying multiple times. Still doesn't stay. Every time he comes back to try to put it back on, he loses it.
That foot is so small, it's hard to target when you're still in the air.
Another move or a soft shoe would actually be better because you could wedge it in there better and hopefully make it stay. The shoes that Sean had on earlier, I believe, are pretty soft. And it kind of looks like Adam's having a hard time actually wedging his foot in there. It also could be a problem with just tension overall. Not able to make that happen, as Hugo Hoyer is going to have another chance to get up there. Also not going to make it happen on boulder number 3, but great climbing from both athletes. They definitely got some points to add to their scores, and Hugo with that number 10. Actually, both Adam and Hugo getting that number 10 on men's number 1, so they're racking up the points as they go through this round. So Adam Shahar with a score of 19.5 after 2 boulders. And Hugo Hoyer with a score of 29.4 after being on 3 boulders.
It's interesting to watch these scores change as athletes complete more boulders. We do have half of the field having climbed more than the other half with this staggered format, so I think those numbers are going to change around a lot. For example, this is just Jesse Grouper's second boulder of the night. I'm really excited to see how he does on this boulder because it's a combination of those more jumpy moves that he's maybe less comfortable on, but it does test so much just pure finger strength and pure climbing, which is something that he is very comfortable with and really enjoys. So I'm excited to see Jesse on this boulder. I think he's going to like it.
Yeah, I think he just needs to get through the opening section, and then I think he'll really enjoy, like you said, the rest of the boulder. Not really finding the establishing positions right away, going at it in a dynamic way. I think Xander's one of the only people who went at it in a less dynamic way as Xander starts walking his way through men's number 3. Jesse just dropping the palm there. I feel like he didn't quite have the crimp engaged enough with his shoulder in order to get into the right position to press into that palm and create that opposition between his left hand and his right hand to kind of hold that swing that is generated when you do jump into a position like that.
Yeah, and Xander did a really good job of getting up into his boulder as well, just sort of losing it off the volume sort of unexpectedly, so I'm sure he'll be correcting for that on the next attempt. Jesse is lining up for the move that he fell on last time. Let's see if he can make it stick. I think he sort of just lost purchase on the left hand that time.
I almost wonder if jumping to the crimp like Adam did would actually be a better option for Jesse. I feel like this palm press is not necessarily the best way for him specifically to do it. I feel like that's not a move that he does as often. We'll have to see if he figures something else out as Xander starts pulling around this gray volume, just absolutely bypassing the black one straight into the 10 zone. See what his approach is here. If he chooses to kind of hop up into that pinch and hold it and then bring the feet up, or do that dynamic movement that hasn't worked yet, but doesn't mean it won't. It does seem like it is the intended beta to kind of jump up into it.
Jesse Grouper staticking his way through that jump that was giving him so much trouble. Making contact with that crimp. Xander Waller falls on that dynamic move on the right of your screen. Jesse finding that little blocked foothold really well and crossing through to that 10-point zone. Eyeing up the foot to make sure it stays. Really trying to control this unwind. And just, I think, quite not having his right foot maybe on the right position on that volume. Not quite being able to find the body position he was looking for in order to be able to unwind, but had a little bit of a smile there from him when he hit the ground, so I think he was pleased with that progress.
Yeah, he has to feel great knowing that he knows now how to get into the openings, or get through the opening section of the boulder so he can continue to try to get points on this boulder. Xander Waller just losing body position there for a second. Definitely has time to get back up there. The clock is almost at a minute. This is a boulder, though, that I think you can get through pretty fast once you've figured out what you need to do, as long as you kind of stay in line with the balance positions.
Absolutely.
A better job here.
And this boulder will be interesting. I think the way that Nathaniel solved it, as I said, was really particular to him, and due to his creativity, and also he was able to just reach up with his left hand, which some of the shorter competitors might not be able to do. I don't think that includes Xander. I think he could do it similarly to how Nathaniel did, but I do really think we're going to see a lot of different solutions attempted coming off of this 10-point zone, and Xander just needs to figure out what's going to work best for him here.
Jesse back up, actually trying to match on the crimps here. That would be interesting for getting to the top, actually, as Xander makes progress and makes contact with that pinch. Now he would have to kick his heel up or walk his feet up. We saw Nathaniel kick his heel up. Not going to make it happen. Kind of another moment where Xander's doing extra work but not getting rewarded points-wise. That's always really difficult as an athlete, to know that you put in that extra work and you really don't walk away with anything. It's just one of those things you have to learn to get over. Jesse Grouper, boulder score of 14.6 after 2 boulders in this round, as Xander Waller walks back to that secondary ISO.
That's sort of the second time in a row for him that he's come up with something and gotten either toward the top on the second boulder and was unable to match, and made progress on that third boulder and was unable to get additional points. So hopefully Xander can keep his head in it. Luckily, I think he should be able to tell that this is a low tops round, and so it's not like he's falling way behind. He's right in it with his fellow competitors, and if he can stay in it mentally, he can still perform really well in this round. We have Dylan Bob Countryman out now on boulder number 2, and Sean Bailey with a score of 15.0 after the first 2 boulders out on boulder number 3. Being another athlete that got so close to the top on boulder number 2 but just wasn't able to get both hands on that finish hold, he'll be really hungry for a top here on boulder number 3.
Exactly. A little slip already right out of the gate. Those boulders getting more and more slippery as each athlete comes out and stands on them. I do think this is a boulder that if Sean gets to the top of it, it'll be really interesting, like we were saying, to see how he does it, because very different dimensions from Nathaniel, so likely not going to fit in it the same way. Bob quickly to the 5. Wow. Palm press for like half a second and then went right back up to the crimp.
Doing it with flair.
Yeah, sets up to do this cross. Looks like his toe is wedged in there pretty well as, ooh, little drop there. Sean is already quickly into the 10, has to decide how he wants to go to this pinch. Definitely the better method that we've seen so far, so reading that right out of the gate is really important here. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Flipping it to that Gaston was insane. So now he just needs to figure out how he can create that opposition. He's going to do it the same way as Nathaniel. Amazing job. Wow,
Megan,
Sean
for a
Bailey.
move that is that creative and that rare, to have 2 of our top athletes find the same solution for that move is really incredible. That was a very interesting boulder to see Sean do that move to the orange pitch in such a different way than Nathaniel Coleman did, but then to find the same solution for the end.
Yeah.
Really incredible. Amazing to see, and the crowd loved it here too.
I almost wonder if they did talk about that when they were previewing, especially Nathaniel and Sean having been on the circuit for so many years. There is a good chance that they were like, oh man, what if you need to stack your feet in order to get into that knee bar? I feel like I could totally see that happening.
And I'm not totally sure. I haven't climbed this boulder, and we did not talk to the route setters about this, but I mean, that could very well be what the route setters has intended.
Yeah,
that could sort of be the only option up there. I could see some athletes trying to get their foot up onto that 10-point zone to try to find a different way to finish it, but that seems so intuitive for both Sean and Nathaniel, and really, really cool bowler from the route setters that has so many different solutions.
Most definitely, and we saw a flash of Sean's score of 39.9. He is ahead of Nathaniel just by one less fall, so they are really close within this round so far as Bob Dylan Countryman gets up on men's number 2 again, kind of having an issue like we've seen a lot of the men, keeping that foot in between those 2 screw-on holds for this cross release. Getting into the cross, not so bad, but it's truly the release, that unwinding of that cross is proving to be very difficult. You see him ripping the tape off of his skin, going to retape, especially for the athletes that have started to have to tape their fingers. When you're in positions like that on crimps, it's easy for the tape to start peeling and sliding when you're putting that much pressure, and I bet that hasn't been easy on a boulder like that. So Dylan Bob Countryman will end with a score of 14.9 on men's number 1 and 2 combined, and we are going to go to a quick commercial break, and we'll see you back in a sec.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Welcome back to the men's boulder final at the 2023 National Team Trials. Here are your current standings. Sean Bailey at the top of the leaderboard with Nathaniel Coleman right below him, only separated by a fall. Zach Galla really close as well, but he has only been on 2 boulders so far. Hugo Hoyer right behind him. Jesse Gruber rounding it out right now. So the men just fighting for points here, looking to come into that lead discipline with as many points under them as possible. For some of them, lead is not their specialty, and even for those who it is, you want to go into that lead round knowing that you have some wiggle room. You don't want to be feeling like you need to top the route in order to get the standing you want. You see that quick flash of Zach Galla's score of 34.7 as he brushes the holds, and we're seeing our first look of men's number 4. This will be Nathaniel Coleman's last boulder of the round. Really got things going with a top on men's number 3. The first top we saw of the night, got the crowd so excited, and really excited to see what he'll do here. This boulder is quite powerful and something that I think would suit him well.
Yeah, and with the end of boulder number 2, we saw Dylan Countryman just finishing up his attempts. Zach Galla is the only top of that boulder, so that will be a great confidence boost for him going into this third boulder. He obviously doesn't know that for sure, but I think he probably has a pretty good idea that a top there was really good for him.
Exactly, and Nathaniel was starting to make quick work of that boulder, kind of got in an awkward position there as Zach seeing if he could crimp behind that volume for a second before coming out right. You know,
choosing the low road here.
Yeah, definitely choosing the low road, but looking really comfortable in that position. And the men can talk if they want to about boulders past, so there is a chance that they already did discuss, oh, you did number 2, like, oh my gosh, how'd you figure it out, kind of thing, once the boulder is no longer in play. So there is a chance that he definitely knows that, oh, I see that part, I would have tried to crimp that too.
Yeah, that was smart from Zach Galla.
Good idea, but into the 10 the right way. I think he will try to hop to this. Oh my gosh. Wow, Zach Galla. Now let's see if he can figure out exactly how to get that knee bar in. Look, oh, doesn't even need it. Just stand there and match. Zach Galla really showing that he wants to make that national team here tonight with an incredible round so far. 2 tops, the only person so far with those 2 tops. And he still has 1 more boulder to go.
Yeah, and this is really becoming a bit of a storybook bouldering round for Zach Galla. He was another one of the athletes that maybe didn't have the performance he was looking for at Boulder Nationals in particular back in the fall. So this is becoming a redeeming round for him here at Team Trials, and it's really cool to see him shining under these high pressure situations.
Exactly. You know, it's hard. You want to be perfect at every competition. You can't. Like, he didn't even make finals in lead or boulder at nationals, so to have the opportunity to do well here and possibly still make the team is huge, especially because he's another athlete that was so close to making the Olympics but just missed it at Pan Am. So Nathaniel Coleman doing a great job reading this boulder, setting up for the top, doesn't get high enough. Also looks like he went to maybe not the best side of the hold, but we didn't really get a full view there.
This jump from Zach Galla was absolutely unbelievable, jumping straight into that undercling, unwinding, almost completely hitting the wall on the other side.
Insane.
Unbelievable.
And it was so cool to see Nathaniel Coleman taking a second to watch Zach top that boulder. Also, I'm sure Nathaniel was like psyched to see it done in a different way. And you know, all these athletes are friends and supportive of one another. So Nathaniel's going to choose not to give another attempt. Maybe a smart decision given that there is still a lead route to do. And Nathaniel is an athlete who has spent a lot of time working on lead. Flash there of Zach Galla's score of 59.7. So that puts him at the top of the leaderboard with still another boulder to go. Nathaniel looking at his skin.
I think that was the second "oh baby" we've heard from Nathaniel in the past 15 minutes.
Apparently he has a catchphrase. So 49.7 after the boulder round. Still possible to get a lot of points in the lead round as he has become quite the lead climber these days. Adam Shahar waiting for that go-ahead to get on men's boulder 3. Score of 19.5 as of now as Hugo Hoyer brushes men's number 4. I mean, I do think deciding not to give another attempt on men's number 4 for Nathaniel was smart, if for nothing else but to save skin.
Absolutely, and Dylan Countryman, we saw him do the same thing on boulder number 2. I think that reflects a good amount of wisdom from these athletes. They do have to conserve skin, and especially on boulders like 2 and 3 that are so steep and so overhung, you sort of have to weigh the odds of how much did these attempts actually take out of me, and what are the odds that I could actually get back up there with only a 15-second rest.
I think it's also important to note that the semifinal route and the final route were both up earlier today. So the men saw 2 routes up. They didn't know exactly which would be which until they came and saw the semifinal preview. So they kind of already have seen a little bit of the finals route as well. Of course, they'll still get a preview later, but that could be part of the strategy as to why he might have not continued to try this boulder. Hugo Hoyer getting up into that 5 low zone very quickly. Kind of hard to see all the holds on this boulder, actually. When we were looking at it, we were walking by from farther away.
Megan didn't see any of them.
I didn't. We got up closer and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many more holds on here. I had no idea. I was like, what do you do here? And then I saw the holds. But that, I mean, using black holds on a black volume really make it so the men have to be clearly paying attention and being really on point with their route reading.
And a little tidbit too, the route setters do change a lot over the course of setting, and there are just spaces where you can see they used to have holds, which is also tricky. You can see the screw holes, you can see the outline of chalk. So these athletes really are having to take an extra minute and make sure they're finding all the holds. Black holds on black volumes is a tricky move from these route setters, and is really going to test the route reading skills of these men tonight.
Exactly, but that also is something that comes with experience, really making sure that you are slowing yourself down and paying attention to everything in front of you. Adam Shahar really struggling to get established here and keep moving. Slipped off the volumes quite a few times. Another look at the route setters here. You see that whole team in this front row. They all have really fun sweatshirts on. Let's see, USA Climbing route setter.
The uniform,
so
if you will.
They're all looking very serious right now, actually. No one's really giving us much emotion at the moment.
I know, I was hoping they'd give us something. They just had a camera in their face.
I know. Honestly, they look like they tried to ignore the camera, but, you know, I mean, route setters are definitely more of the behind-the-scene people. I should know I'm married to one, so they're generally not necessarily that psyched to have cameras in their face.
Anywhere but the camera.
Pretty sure Brad Weaver was like, do not put me in the booth later. Hugo trying to get back into the positions he was in before on this boulder. Very steep part of the wall, kind of difficult to end on for the men, especially with that lead route looming later on in the evening for them.
You can see the frustration building for Adam there on the first move of this boulder. Sort of letting out a little bit of a scream there as he hit the ground. It's honestly really frustrating to be trying to pull onto a start of a boulder in a final round and not be able to find the solution. And there he just ended up squeezing harder, I think was the method he found there.
I'm curious how that affected his skin. Really needs to take advantage of getting into the, oh wow, just kind of jumps the gun there. I don't know if that was really the best move, and he's gonna go again. He definitely knows or maybe he doesn't know fully, but I'm sure he has an idea that he's kind of falling behind points-wise a little bit and needed to get into the 10, but not gonna make it happen.
Especially coming out towards the end of the running order, he will have heard all of the tops that happened so far on that boulder, so he will have an idea that it has now had multiple tops. We see Hugo Hoyer there with a boulder score of 34.4 after his final boulder. We will see him again later on in the lead round, but he has done his boulder round for now. Adam Shahar going down to sit behind him. He still has one more boulder to go, but currently has a score of 23.5. I think he would have liked to secure that 10 zone at least on that boulder, so he'll be looking to make up ground on his final boulder of the night as Jesse Grouper walks out to his third.
And that final boulder of the night is the only boulder that we haven't seen a top, or no, I'm sorry, it is another boulder we have not seen a top on yet. We did not see a top on number 1, but 2 and 3 have both been topped at this point. So it does seem like a tall order to gain more points here. This boulder does seem quite difficult, but you also never know how it's going to suit someone. Nathaniel Coleman watching on as his fellow competitors try the rest of the boulders in the round. That is one good thing about coming out first. You do get to watch your friends on the boulders as well. It's pretty cool to see if they do things differently, And a lot of these athletes train together, a lot of them living in Salt Lake City right now. Actually, you know, these two specifically are there, as is Nathaniel. In fact, does our entire final live there? No, our entire final does not.
And Hugo.
And Bob. Yeah, it doesn't. But a lot of people, the rest of them.
It's true.
The other 4, or what? The other 5. Well, Sean's back and forth.
Yeah, they put themselves all in the same house. They all live in. I'm just kidding. They don't.
Welcome to the real world.
But it is a complicated relationship to have with people, to be friends, to be supportive of one another, but also all of these people are vying for a limited number of spots on the same team. So it's complicated emotions.
It really is.
Having lived it before myself, it's hard to both want success for your friends and want success for yourself, and sometimes to not be able to have both at the same time.
I can say I have not lived that before. I've never lived with any of my competitors, so I don't have that experience.
I just been lived the experience, not literally lived in the same building.
Yeah, but I thought that's what you were referencing, because you and Kyra lived together for a long time.
I mean, I did live with, again, our second place finisher from last night for a long time, but what was nice about our friendship is she competes for the U.S. and I always competed for Canada. So
this is true.
It was less direct competition, less often.
That's pretty lucky. Jesse trying to figure out the opening moves on men's number 3. Honestly, a little surprised. I felt like this is the kind of boulder that he would be able to figure out. He still has plenty of time to get into the 5 and the 10. Those volumes do get quite slippery, though, especially when volumes are newer. I feel like there's the wearing in process first, and then, you know, having so many people back to back on these boulders, it's sometimes hard to have those areas not get too slippery too fast, and you just really have to remember to keep brushing them, which also cuts into your time, so it's kind of a strategy thing.
Jesse doing a really good job here of finding a little bit of a workaround beta, going up to that 5 zone first before that orange hold you can see his left hand is on now. Really good patience from him as per usual, figuring out his own way, easing his way around this gray volume, really fighting to hold the tension in that left shoulder.
Tries to grab the black volume versus kind of pressing up into it like we've seen some of the other athletes. Also, Xander Waller was making some really good progress on men's number 4. It kind of like made me pause for a second as I saw him scoot his hand across that volume and just like leave dark fingerprint after dark fingerprint, with just how sweaty his hands are probably getting in this humidity here.
Yeah, and one thing with thin skin, as a lot of these athletes likely have, obviously blood is an issue. You can't be bleeding on these boulders. You have to have your fingers taped. That is a rule in the rule book. But the other factor is, as your skin gets thinner, it actually gets sweatier.
Yep.
So not only is blood the only factor, but also just these athletes want to have the best friction they can between their hands and the holds. And the thinner your skin gets in these successive rounds here, the harder it will be for them to hold on to those volumes.
Xander a little disappointed with the way he finished that round. You could see it on his face. I do think he'll feel better when he finds out that he's not as low scoring as he thinks he is in reference to everyone else. Definitely would have wanted to get a few more points on the board. Well, I guess he's on the lower end for sure, but I mean, he is a good lead climber, so it might happen. Jesse Gruber with a 19.2, but still one more boulder to go as Dylan Bob Countryman runs out to men's number 3. And we have Sean Bailey on men's number 4 in a second.
I think Dylan was a little bit disappointed that he couldn't even try again on the last boulder. He was really struggling with the tape on his fingers. I think he would have liked to give it another attempt. So I bet he's eager to get out there. Sean Bailey with a boulder score of 39.9 already heading into this last boulder.
Good spot.
Yeah, sitting pretty already. So I think he's just going to be looking to build upon that score.
Yeah, a little less stress here, knowing that he has that top under his belt. I feel like Dylan's going to like number 3 being that I don't think aside from kind of moving across, but I don't think the tape's really going to be much of a factor on his skin on this one. The holds are much better. It's more about body positions. As we see Sean Bailey quickly getting into men's number 4. I actually think he's really going to like this boulder. I think he just needs to be efficient through it.
They're really fighting with the toe hooks a little bit there.
I think that's actually going to be the part he doesn't like the most. I think it's the next section with the crimps and the better body positions that he might enjoy more.
You called it, Megan. Dylan is easing his way through the start of this boulder very quickly into this undercling pinch.
We'll have to see his approach here. No knee bar needed. Wow, that was so fast. Gonna be a little redeeming moment there for Dylan Bob Countryman, as he'll go back with a lot of time to rest before he needs to come out again.
It's always sort of incredible when you have an athlete like Dylan, as you can see there on your screen, he leaves with a score of 39.9, who can come out and make a boulder that we've seen so many other people struggle with look so easy like that. It just suited him for whatever reason. It was sort of the boulder he was waiting for. He really needed that boulder, and he did a great job of staying composed and really executing. And it was honestly, that's probably, if the route setters had imagined somebody climbing it well, that is what they would have pictured right there.
That sigh of relief there as he brought that other hand in to match, knowing that he was getting a lot of points on that boulder. Definitely something he wanted to do. All the points on that boulder. No falls. A flash with that full 25 as Sean Bailey tries to get through these toe hooks. Does seem like a pretty awkward part. Oh man, he's really spanned there. He does not look pleased.
Yeah, he's got his fellow competitors sitting there watching on. They are done climbing now. They are allowed to sit in front of that partition outside of the secondary ISO and watch the rest of the action unfold. And since Dylan Countryman has completed boulder number 3, he was our last competitor of the night. So all the action from now on in this boulder final will be on this final boulder.
And Sean Bailey is an athlete who has been on the U.S. team or on the national team for so many years, not just in the Elite Series, but also since he was a youth competitor year after year after year. So he has so much experience, and also it's the standings that we have overall right now. As long as he does what he needs to do, it's looking like he's likely to make that team again. And he's already got great points in this round. Obviously, adding to those points right now would be great. It's a little unfortunate that he has struggled so much with this toe hook section. Again, I feel like if he could get up into those crimps, it would be a very different story for him. He is a bit spanned here. I'm honestly not a huge fan of moves like this where if you are a little on the smaller side dimension-wise, like you see his tip to tip has to be perfect. There is no room for error, and you have that yellow volume in front of him, or hold in front of him, kind of pushing him out. Is he going to be able to make it into the 5 with enough time? Unfortunately, no. I feel like if this was a boulder comp, he would maybe just keep climbing. But since he has lead, there's no point of adding any more skin. He asked if he got that zone in time. I don't believe he did, but it looks like they did give it to him. That's awesome. So that's so worth it for Sean Bailey. Any points are great. Now he's trailing Nathaniel not by too much, so a score of 44.5. Great way to end the round. Obviously, he wanted to get a little higher, but points nonetheless. And we're going to go to a quick commercial break before we get to more of the men's final.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional, and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow is just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In the this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.
Welcome back to the men's boulder final at the USA Climbing 2023 National Team Trials. Here is a look at your current standings from the boulder round. Zach Galla at the top with a 59.7, followed closely by Nathaniel Coleman and Sean Bailey. Dylan Bob Countryman still has another boulder to go, so he can improve upon that score. But honestly, Allison, as well as Zach Galla, but a pretty low-scoring round right now. Zach being able to add to that 59.7 could put him into that 60, 70 round depending on how he does, which is honestly really big because as his score stands right now, that being the top score is quite low going into the lead round.
Yeah, and with a low-scoring round like this, it will put a lot of pressure on the lead route, again, depending on how difficult it is and how high people are getting on that route, which we will go over later when the lead final live stream starts. But yeah, for Zach Galla, him topping this boulder could make a really big difference. It could really solidify himself as the leader of this pack.
For the whole competition.
And it would look really great for the results to have some scores that are a little bit higher than sort of half the available points at the moment. Easy into that bump for Zach Galla.
I was going to say Zach is a little bit longer than Sean, so this opening section shouldn't be too bad for him, and I think we'll be able to see him get into that 10 zone. Ooh, good first attempt. Quickly looking at the skin, though, some big eyes.
That will bump his score into the 60s, though, which
is great. For the scoring itself, in terms of the leader of Boulder, we generally want to see them more in the 60-70 zone versus just over the 50. I mean, if more of the scores are in the 50 zone, that's okay, but the leader should really be a bit higher going into that lead round, just since the available points there are another 100 points. So 64.7 is his current score, and he has plenty of time to improve upon that score. The opening move not seeming too difficult for him, just needs to catch that next hold, those yellow holds on the black volume a little bit better.
And I think just removing ourselves a little bit from the severity and intensity of this comp, I think the crowd would really like to see a top on this boulder. This has been a low top comp.
I think they would. I gotta hand it to the crowd. They've been really great at celebrating every top we have had in the round. It's been extremely exciting. The lights go crazy, the crowd goes wild, so if Zach Galla could give us a top, it'd be incredible. He is making me nervous that he keeps looking at his skin. They obviously have the lead round still to come, so definitely want to save some skin for that.
I do feel like sometimes when I fall off anything, just even in the gym, I look at my hands almost just like, why did you let go?
Fail me? What's wrong with you?
And sometimes it is instinctual for these athletes, so it's a little bit hard to know if it's a skin issue or if it's just frustration.
That's a fair point. They could be just duping us all, and they're really just totally fine skin-wise. They just can't stop looking at their hands. Zach taking a good rest here. I think that's wise. He knows what he needs to do. He just hasn't exactly found those positions. So taking that rest is really smart, and another sign of a very seasoned competitor.
And he'll likely once again be able to tell that there have been less tops this round, so we'll know that he is in an okay position having topped 2 boulders, and might be just thinking in a more efficiency type sense and trying to save some for that lead round. And when you only have a few seconds, 30 seconds or so to rest, and the boulder is this powerful, you really have to weigh the pros and cons of giving it another go.
Exactly. Setting the heel here doesn't quite work out there. It did seem like a better idea. I would be surprised if he gets back on here. It does look like he's just going to go for it. I think it would be really hard to get to the 10 in time. Yeah.
I mean, and that first foot move is so demanding. He's essentially just doing a front lever over and over again to get his toes into that position. Typically, when we have a foot lead like that, the setters will maybe give you a little bit of a foot chip to help a little bit to get those toes up, and they did not give them that in this case. So really great effort from Zach Galla. I think he would have maybe wanted some more points in that boulder, as we were talking about, but overall a really great score from him, 64.7. He is sitting at the top of the leaderboard at the moment, which minimally will feel really good for him heading into that lead round.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see someone break into the 60-point range on this boulder. Adam Shahar up next. Really needs some points here. Even if he gets a top, he's still going to be below Zach Gala, but definitely possible here.
He's doing a good job of taking the time to brush. I think, as we've already discussed, skin is thin, and so minimally these athletes are sweaty. So as we've gone through this round, there's a lot of buildup of chalk and sweat on these holds, and Adam's doing a great job of making sure the boulder is as prepped as possible before he pulls on.
You definitely want your first go to be your best go in terms of getting all of the points. Already in a good position here. Needs to make room for his hand. Oh, choosing to go under. That was interesting.
And kind of with both hands. His left hand was a little bit trailing. I think he was maybe trying to palm in to that start hold.
Maybe overthinking this movement a little bit, but you do never know what the root setters are going to throw at you, so having that ability to be very creative in your thought process is not a bad thing.
You can see him here lining up to go with both hands, right hand to the pink, left hand into the yellow. I mean, that would have been cool.
That would have been really cool. I'm sure he probably realized that maybe that's not the way, so we'll see what he does. Again, just getting that toe over is quite difficult. Like you said, Allison, it is basically doing a front lever on some pretty bad / okay slopers. So he's going to take a moment here to tape his hands again. Still plenty of time on the clock for him to do so.
Yeah, he's got about 2.5 minutes left. As you can see, just popped up there on the left side of your screen. Good choice for him to take the time to tape. He does have a lead round still to complete again today. And yeah, he's doing a really great job of taking his time, taking his rest well, making sure to take care of his skin. Man, that front lever position is just so taxing on the core, and if you miss it on that first go, it's really hard to recover.
Honestly, if you miss it on that first attempt, you should just kind of let go because you're just taxing your abs a little bit more. And he still needs those muscles later on for that lead route. He's looking a little disheartened here as he is wondering how to get through this section. You know, it's a hard place to be. You know you really need the points, and you know you still have time, but he has to be tired at this point. He does still have a lead route. What's the best decision? I feel like, especially as a younger athlete, keeping, like, the fact that he's still trying makes a lot of sense. Still having to retape, untape, and retape. That's the worst, honestly. When your skin is that bad and you're having to untape, retape, he's choosing to go without the tape because he can't really hold on with the tape on those slopers.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot in the women's round last night, but it can just be frustrating when all you want to do is climb and show your best and do what you can do on these moves, and it's your skin and the tape and the logistics of having such a packed day like this that are feeling like they're maybe getting in the way a little bit.
The crowd trying to pump him up here, really getting behind him. Love to see that happen. Yeah, I feel like it's almost more frustrating when your skin starts to fail you versus your actual muscles starting to fail you. That was a quick look at the crowd, still in it with Adam Shahar as he tries to get through this opening section. Able to get to the toe hook a few times, but now struggling to get in it again. Just kind of zapped for energy. He's going to head back, and that will be the end of the boulder round for him, but he does still have a lead climb to come. His score of 23.5 is quite low, unfortunately, for him.
Megan, we do still have a really good crowd up here supporting our last few athletes, but the ones that were in not the best viewing position for the bouldering round have already started scrambling downstairs to get in a better spot for the lead. So we've got a good crowd up here still supporting our last few athletes, but we've got a good probably half the crowd already scrambling downstairs to get a good spot for lead. So stay tuned.
Crowd. Jesse Grouper with that tote bag. We didn't get a chance to do a what's in Jesse Grouper's bag, but you know, maybe we'll post something later on our Instagrams. Jesse Grouper with a score of 19.2, looking to improve upon it here. A nice quick look at that tote bag. I'm guessing there's definitely tape, a couple more pairs of shoes. I don't think there's a fan. I feel like it would already be out. Maybe some extra chalk.
A snack? I don't know.
Well, definitely water. We saw him drinking water earlier.
Water, for sure. Yep, that one is proven.
Maybe a good luck charm in there. I don't know.
Maybe it'll remain a mystery. Maybe we shouldn't reveal what's in Jesse Gruber's tote bag.
We'll just keep you guessing. Unable to get into that tow hook on that first attempt. It almost looked like his strap might not be all the way Velcro down either. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Sometimes that doesn't make that much of a difference,
I don't
but
think
it's
it was
distracting.
Yeah, I don't think it was because of that. I just noticed it, and I kind of want him to fix it just in case it does cause a problem at some point. But he can't hear me, so.
Going for
there
that
you go.
toe lead. We got a good, wow, fancy footwork with the walkthrough there.
Very lead climber-esque. Looks like he's just trying to make some room here. He's going to chalk up real quick as if he is on a lead route.
I mean, that might be the first time I've seen somebody in a while chalk up while still on the start holds.
It is pretty amazing. First time for everything. Choosing to go underneath as well. We saw Adam try that moments ago. Didn't quite work. He also tried to get into a palm press on the yellow hold. We'll see if Jesse kind of adjusts and goes to the top. That's the way we've kind of seen it work more often than not.
Jesse is at the bottom of the boulder standings right now. It's going to be important for him moving into the lead round to not panic about that, as he knows his preferred discipline is still coming up. However, with 2 minutes still remaining on the clock, getting that extra 5 points, getting that extra 10 points, and ideally 25 would be really great for him.
It would be huge. I mean, especially coming from the semifinals round where he topped the route and still wasn't able to catch up to the leader from that round, Dylan Bob Countryman. So, like you said, more points here is going to be really helpful. Though, I'm sure Jesse knows he is capable of topping another route today. Here's a quick look at those current standings. Zach Galla on top of the leaderboard, 64.7. You see Jesse down there at the bottom, 19.2. Dylan Bob Countryman, 39.9. He should be coming out soon with another boulder to get on.
I mean, one of the factors for Jesse about getting points in this bouldering event is that mental space that he's going to be in going in towards the lead route later. He's really going to be fighting for all these boulder points right until the very end. I think he knows that every point counts. I don't think he's going to just throw the towel in and rely on his lead climbing skills. He's really going to be fighting for everything he can in this round, because that's who he is as an athlete, but also because every point counts, and I think he really knows that.
Totally. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a little surprised that he keeps trying the same thing here. I'm surprised he hasn't really tried anything different and trying to come down onto that pink hold over top versus underneath.
Yeah, and bumping his right hand. He is one of the taller competitors, so I'd like to think if he was able to get into that position again and try that bump one more time, or try that bump at all, I should say, that is the beta he might agree with a little bit better.
He is running down the clock, but again, just even getting to that 5 would really help his score, and we saw Sean Bailey do that earlier with just a few seconds left on the clock. Is back on the toe, see if he makes any adjustments here. Does look like he's skipping or sticking to this beta where he comes underneath. Kind of in a better position now, I think. Oh, not going to make it happen, but still a smile on his face. Plenty of climbing to come from Jesse Gruber. Still has that lead route where he is likely to do very well. Not going to be able to improve upon his score of 19.2. So pretty low for that boulder round. Now it is to his advantage that nobody is in that 90 or 80 point range, but the fact that Zach is all the way up at 64.7 should make him a little nervous. And we do still have Dylan Bob Countryman to come, and he's at a 39.9 without the 4th boulder, so he could definitely improve upon that score as well.
Yeah, and it's tough. It'll be tough for somebody like Jesse going into this lead route, starting with a low score like that. Obviously, he does prefer lead, and he is outstanding at it, and he is one of the U.S.'s best lead climbers, having won World Cups this past season. He has a lot of experience to rely on, but it's not like these other athletes in the final are slouches at lead either. So
not at all.
It does work to Jesse's advantage that this round is low scoring. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the lead, and that is where Jesse can shine. So it's not over yet. Not even close. This boulder round has really been setting up the lead route to be very important, and we'll see what Dylan Countryman can do here to close out our boulder round before heading into that lead route later on this evening.
Exactly, and it's interesting because in the women's round, we kind of had a bit of a runaway after the boulder round for some of the athletes, but we predicted earlier that this was going to be a really stressful final, and it is proving to be that. Everyone's still in the running for gaining more points on the lead route. Bob could do something huge here if he could top the boulder. Everyone's just so close still, and we just don't really know what's going to happen, so there's a lot more stress leading into the lead round, having really nobody figured out, whereas in the women's final it was a little more secure for a few of the athletes, which takes a little pressure off us as viewers, knowing that we don't need to stress about every person getting on the wall. Bob Dylan trying some really interesting beta there. Very dynamic. He is quite powerful. I feel like that's so high up in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, and Dylan is so young but already has such a unique style, such a creative, powerful style in his climbing, and you can sort of see him building on that, see that developing as he competes in more elite competitions. This has really been a breakout season for him, winning the U.S. Boulder National Championships back in the fall. It sort of put him on the map as far as climbing goes in the U.S. And so it's been really cool to see him doing well at this competition as well, and really growing and learning and improving.
Yeah, it was actually really interesting leading up to that event, because at all of the NAC competitions, I feel like he was all anyone could talk about. Oh, have you seen that kid, Dylan Countryman? Like, oh, Bob, he's so strong. And so for him to be able to come out in the at nationals in the boulder round and also the lead round, you know, made the final, maybe didn't do as well in the final as he wanted to, but his actual first year in the elite, he really wasn't able to show what he could do that year. So to have that all happen this November was really great for him and kind of set him up nicely to then have that possibility to make the team and gain that experience on the World Cup circuit.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And him, you can see him there just trying something
Lots
else
of betas.
a little bit more creative than he even was trying before, a little bit more powerful, a little bit more dynamic. I think he maybe is getting tired here, just trying anything that might work. This first move does seem confusing. It seems like nothing really feels that good. You can see him going face first into the ground there.
That was a little rough.
And all of his fellow competitors done their rounds now, watching on. Nathaniel Coleman
still with the high point on that boulder.
Very early on, he was our first competitor out. He has the 10-point zone on this boulder, and no one's been able to get really even close to there.
And he walked away from the boulder. Like, he did that attempt, and he was like, cool, I'm going to rest now.
That's all I got. I'll see y'all later.
I have a lead route to climb. I'm going to take a break.
And that was a good call from him. It
was.
Seems like this boulder is proving to be incredibly difficult. Nobody else, once again, has gotten up to his high point. So really wise decision from Nathaniel Coleman. Dylan Countryman really liking this dynamic method, but it doesn't look like that's going to stick. I think that'll be all for him on this boulder. He's throwing in the towel, deciding that's it on his bouldering round. And with the end of that boulder, that is the end of our men's boulder final. Dylan Countryman finishing his round with a score of 39.9.
You know, he's in a pretty good position right now. He's kind of in the middle of the pack, 39.9. In a low-scoring round, not so bad. If it was a high-scoring round, different story. But the fact that Zach Galla has a score of 64.7, he's still not that far off from that. So I think things are still within his grasp. Let's look at those standings here. Zach Galla on top with 64.7. Jesse Gruber 19.2 at the bottom. In that middle section, a lot of 44, 39, 34 with Sean Bailey, Dylan, Bob Countryman, and Hugo Hoyer. We still have more climbing to come. This was just the first half of the final, so this is halftime. We'll have about 20 minutes, not a lot of rest for the men, and then we will be back for the lead final, and that's when everything's going to be decided. So this is the main event, the lead final, and we will be back soon with that. Remember to check out USA Climbing YouTube to find that link for the final, and we'll see you there.
You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never gonna learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you can throw at me, like, you're not gonna take me away from what I wanna do. You can't stop me.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow is just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.